I would say that on the subject you just raised, is there a cultural revolution taking place or coming back to China? I can say confidently that there are two schools of thought. The first school of thought, I would say, is what you will find in the Anglo-Saxon media, that this is clearly Xi Jinping going back to the ideological roots of the Chinese Communist Party and saying the time has come now, China is rich enough, now we can go back to socialism, we're going to crack down on these big firms, big tech, and now focus on redistributing the pie. And as you know, the phrase used is common prosperity, and let's take care of people at the bottom, and so on and so forth. So, and if that happens, of course, if indeed he's cracking down on industries and big tech and big money and all that, then you could see, in a sense, in theory, a retreat from capitalism. People will stop investing in China, and frankly, the Chinese economy will collapse. Okay, so that's school number one. Mm-hmm. And I would say it is. I don't rule it out completely. You know, I don't say it's there's a zero prospect of that happening. You know.
We are sorry to interrupt you. Before we move on to the next point, we noticed that a lot of you are returning viewers who have not subscribed. If you've enjoyed our content, subscribing would mean the world to us. It's a small click for you, but it makes a huge difference for us. Thank you for your support.
But there is another school of thought that says that actually Xi Jinping appreciates what China has accomplished under the free market system. Its economy has grown faster than any other countries in the last 30 years, right? I mean, just imagine that in purchasing power parity terms, China's GNP was 10% of the United States in 1980. 2014, it became bigger in PPP terms. In nominal market terms, the US GNP was 8 times the size of China's. Now it's only 1.5 times larger. So this had a tremendous track record. But he thinks that at this point in time, there have also been some excesses have developed. Excesses have developed in the sense of the big firms becoming too large and monopolistic and trying to control the regulators in the same way that big tech in the United States controls the regulators in Washington, D.C. So as you know, in my book, I have a chapter on how the United States has become functionally a plutocracy, which is a government of the 1%, by the 1%, for the 1%. And Xi Jinping is saying, I do not want a plutocracy in China, and I'd rather that we break down the power of these large monopolistic giants. And that's what he's doing. And if that's what he's doing, paradoxically, he may actually unleash entrepreneurial energy by restricting the power of the big tech. Because today, and in fact there was an article in the Financial Times today, if I'm not mistaken, saying that the big tech in the US is so successful, every time a potential competitor emerges, they gobble it up before it can become big enough to be a threat. And there's a guy who's a real expert on artificial intelligence. He's one of the biggest investors in artificial intelligence. He's written one of the definitive books on it. His name is Lee Kai-Fu. Mm-hmm. And I heard him speak at an interview with The Economist. And in the interview, he's invested in 1,000 startups in China. He says all these new moves make it easier for his startups to succeed because they can no longer be eaten up by the giants. So paradoxically, even though in theory Xi Jinping is cracking down on big tech, actually he may be unleashing entrepreneurial energy. Now, frankly, which school of thought is correct? Is Xi Jinping destroying capitalism in China, or is Xi Jinping rejuvenating capitalism in China? There are two schools of thought. We'll find out within 10 years. But I, as a betting man, I place my bets on the second school of thought.
Mm-hmm. Okay. My question is, what is something we can learn from China? How can other countries adapt to a world in which China is the hegemonic power?
What can we learn from China and how can we adapt to China?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think the one thing we can learn from China is that you can take a country where in 1980, about the figures vary, like 80 to 90% of the people lived in poverty, okay? 80 to 90%. And today it's almost down to zero. China's poverty eradication program is the most impressive and most successful poverty eradication program in human history. It's a tremendous accomplishment. For me, poverty eradication is actually very important because actually I was born in poverty. You know, I know what it's like. I was put in a special feeding program when I was 6 years old. I didn't have a flush toilet. I've lived through all that. So I think eradicating poverty should be the number one moral imperative in the world. And China is the leading example of how it can be done and how we should learn lessons from China in that area. And in terms of how we adapt to China, I think it is a fact that whenever a new great power emerges, the world order has got to change and reorient itself, right? And the question is whether or not, to put it very simply, will China emerge as an angry dragon or a peaceful dragon? And we don't know the answer to that because it's what we do today that will determine whether China emerges as an angry dragon or as a peaceful dragon. I think both are possible. Which is why my thesis is that we should try to work with China as it is rising and persuade China to accept the current Western rules-based order that is a gift from the West to the rest of the world. And fortunately, as of now, China actually loves the rules-based order because China has succeeded in developing so well in the last 30 years because the rules-based order has facilitated China's rise. So the World Trade Organization is responsible for China emerging as the world's number one trading power today. So it is not in China's interest to disrupt the rules-based order. But all this can work out if you work out an understanding with China. But if there's no understanding with China, and if there is growing tension and conflict, then it is possible that China could emerge as an angry dragon. Then I think the world will be a less comfortable place.
What do you guys think? Do guys think he is right about China's strategy? Please leave your comment below. We would love to hear from you.
Thank you for making it this far. If you like this video, you might want to share it with a like-minded friend. Thank you, and as always, stay blessed.